Okay, guys, it is 6 o'clock. We have a quorum. I do know that at least Jill is coming, but I'm tempted not to wait more than a minute or two.
I've not spoken to her
You
today.
have not?
So. I have. She's coming.
And she is coming. But you know, let's start going. So we have a 2-hour meeting tonight. Chris Leopold is not coming, unfortunately, but if we do have questions for him, he's busy this evening, but we can try to reach him via text, and if he's available via phone, we can do it that way. And I told him we would reach out around 7 if we needed to. And that's only if we have specific questions moving forward. We had a great meeting a couple weeks ago. We had hoped to schedule tonight's meeting last week, but due to people's schedules, as is often the case in the summer, we had to schedule it for tonight. So thank you for your understanding and sorry about that. Last meeting, we had Brad James and Donna Russo-Savage here, and they explained, I think we basically were pretty familiar with what they were talking about. Nothing was new, really. What was introduced that is new is that Vernon, as of today, is having a vote to potentially be released from the Brattleboro Union High School to see if their, number 6, to see if their community does want to do that. And we have a sense, obviously, that they do, but now it's in law that they can do that without asking us to release them. The other thing we now know is that the law has changed a little bit to extend the deadline, so we now do have an option of presenting our articles of agreement to the voters if we think they are worthy of consideration, which, as we've been chipping away at them for 2 years, one can assume that the general consensus is that we do think they are worthy of consideration. But we would need to vote that out, review the article. What we're going to do tonight is review the articles, because after what we learned in the meeting last time was that there are 1 or 2 articles that we wanted to touch base on again. And so Lyle and Frank did talk to Chris Leopold about that and explore some things. So there are little tweaks to the articles. And Lyle will talk us through those. But we're going to need to review all of those articles and then release the articles to our school boards. Our school boards would need to review those, share comments, as we've done several times. You know how this all works. And then by August 24th, we need to vote. And if we have an upvote, we will release the articles to the Board of Ed. That is our very tight schedule, because a vote would have to happen in November. And Barb has worked through the schedule with Frank and the Board of Ed, and also reviewed it with Frank and Lyle. Reviewed a very tight schedule as to what our timing would be in order to comply with the law at this stage. So we have a rather tight schedule. Our goal is very clear, and we just need to figure out ultimately what we are doing tonight. I would like to, we are going to need to go through the articles, or 2 or 3 articles, and then I've also talked to Frank and Lyle about us reviewing and as necessary, if there's any confusion about the Vernon vote, what the consequences are for us, or really what the consequences are for Vernon, and then to review the schedule. So does that work for everyone? Okay, so let's start by, what we tend to do is open it up to the public, and then, I want to do I'm just talking through, so that's okay. Open it up to the public and then open it up again. There is going to, if these articles do get released and go through the process that I earlier discussed, there will be a lot of meetings with the public, not only obviously our core team here, but in every town, because we go through the cycle of public meetings in each town. But let's go ahead, just so does that work, public comments at the beginning and at the end, as usual? But let's go ahead and start by approving the minutes.
I move that we accept the minutes dated June 21st.
Second.
Any discussion? My only thought, Amy, is that once again, they're excellent minutes, lots of good detail, and thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, one abstention. Okay, so let's open it to you guys. Amy, is there a piece of paper that's going around? Okay, so as always, please write your name down and the town you're from. Does anyone have anything to say at the beginning, or just one?
Well,
Or two?
yeah, I don't know if this is the same thing or not.
Okay, well, go ahead, say who
Jody.
you are.
Jody.
You know the, yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Jody Normiddle from Dummerston. I have a couple of things. There are two people who sent me questions that maybe I should bring up later when you're talking about the articles rather than now, if you would allow me to ask
Actually,
the
I'd prefer you to
questions.
do it now, and then we can address it.
Okay,
So we
well-
really want to be organized and have public comments at the beginning and the end, and if you have something you want us to address, we can easily do it within the work session, Jody.
Okay, all right, I'll do theirs first. Liz Adams asked what was the full capacity of BAMS. She also wanted to make it clear again that the Articles of Agreement do not address grades 7 and 8 in Putney or Dummerston. And then she also, according to the website, pulled up the school property tax rates for all the towns, and says it appears as if Brattleboro's school property taxes will have to rise significantly. So that was from her. Dick Verks just couldn't come either. And he wanted it to be very clear from what we've said before, that there is another way to meet the goals. And he believes in collaboration, not consolidation. And he would like the rest of the school boards to be part of the process for an AGS, which is an alternative structure. The other thing that I wanted to do is I don't know whether everybody saw Andy Davis's letter in the Reformer, where he makes it very clear that many things have changed since the 2 years that the study committee has been going, both locally and AOE, State Board of Education, and the legislature have made a lot of changes. So I'm not going to read the letter, but if somebody hasn't seen it, I will give it to them. One of the things that he does mention, deadlines have come and gone. He mentions the deep divides in WSESU, and whether the merger goes down was 3 or 4 or 5 members, we don't know. And so he goes on, and a lot of the union has a rich history of collaboration. And he says that this can be enlarged to include access to after-school programming, summer tutoring, subsidized meals, and other areas of common need throughout the union. And so it's here if anybody else wants to see it, but it was an excellent letter, and it's been posted on several different sites. So you could probably pick it up.
Okay,
Thank you.
My comment is Paul Normandale from Dummerston. It's just in response to what you just said, Alice, about a vote in November, and looking at the calendars for what things need to happen by, it doesn't give a whole lot of time for doing anything else should the vote not prevail. One or two of the towns decide, don't vote in favor of the articles or of the merger, then, there you are in November, and I think, sort of hamstrung. I asked a similar question at one time, a year or so ago, about what was Plan B if Vernon's approval did not go through, and people kind of chuckled and said, it's not going to happen. Well, unfortunately, it did happen, but I mean, Vernon solved its problem in terms of getting out of the high school. But I guess I'm asking you, do you have a Plan B? And if so, what might it be?
We've never even had the chance to have the Plan A, meaning going.
No, I'm saying if you have a vote in November, there's not much time to do anything else.
Right, that's it.
So,
That's-
yeah, so I'm saying, what happens if you get voted down?
Well, it's not us getting voted down, it
Well,
would be the merger
That's,
of the
I'm
four-town
sorry,
merger.
that's what I
I
meant,
think-
your
I mean,
proposal.
yeah, I think it's up to the Board of Ed, or, as, following the law, individual districts can create a
So
plan.
basically, you'd be throwing out your hands and saying, well, let the state do whatever they want to do.
Oh, I don't think anyone on this committee would agree with that, but, yeah.
I think basically what we're voting on in November is, do we want to merge or not? If the answer is no, then that puts us into the alternate structure by default.
Yeah.
Well, but the alternate structure, in order to prove it, has to be done by sometime in December, I believe, is the latest date that a proposal would have to be made to the State Board of Education. So, am I correct on that date? December 19th
I think
seems
it's a
to
little,
ring
I think it's a
my
little later than that.
January.
Yeah.
Well, that was in the law, but it was also 6 months from when the Board of Education set out the rules for alternative governance structures. And I thought Donna Russo-Savage said at the last meeting that was like December 19th or thereabouts.
I think I can answer for the committee is that the general consensus over the last couple of years that this is a worthy, the articles are very worthy of consideration, and we want our residents and taxpayers to be able to vote on it, and that's what we're intending. We may, yeah. So whatever happens after that is a discussion for afterwards, but I think that must be obvious. All right, so I'm gonna start by, if it's all right with everyone, going through the articles of agreement and having Lyle talk us through them.
Anything else? Can I just make one last point
Yeah.
on that? As far as the alternative structure, my understanding is that really lies with the individual boards.
Correct.
So that seems like a question for the individual boards, not for the study committee. And I would hope that they are preparing themselves for the possibility that the towns don't decide to merge.
And
If they're putting
yeah.
everything on the articles that we've come up with, maybe they should be doing that.
And board, as we know, at least one board has another committee going, and if other boards wanted to, as Ian said, that they would be doing that. So, all right. So let's, Lyle.
So the new articles will be dated July 12th, 2017, and this is as a result of Frank and my conversation with Chris Leopold, and these were based on the questions that you had asked, board members and public had asked at the June study committee meeting. So the first question for Chris Leopold was around strengthening the Articles of Agreement, which is Article 15. So if you want to go to Article 15, which is on, the changes are on the bottom of page 9 and on page 10. So his first thought was that they really are very strong as written, and it would not be legal for us to make them any stronger, because then they become de facto school boards. He said we need to get rid of clerk, because a clerk makes, with a chair, a vice chair, and a clerk, it becomes a de facto school board. So he suggested striking clerk. He did say we should add as identified below, and then be very specific about what and whom we want, what we want for members and whom we want for members on each of the councils, so that there's consistency across all schools.
So right now that's just blank, right?
Right now, it's just blank, yeah. That would be a decision for the study committee to make if they want to identify that.
Excuse me, what number is that you're talking about?
That's Article 15 at the bottom of page 9. Yep. And you'll see it's either strike through or italicized any suggested changes. Okay. If you look over at 10, page 10, also Article 15, in the 4th bullet down, it says serve on hiring committees, which is not, according to statute, allowable. It should be interview committees. So hiring would be struck and interview committees would be substituted in there. And interview committee actually is what we do now. The committees interview and make recommendation. The superintendent then makes a recommendation to the board. So that's would be consistent with what's happening now. And he had some concerns about the members being nominated at town meeting and wanted to be more specific and said they should be nominated at town meeting, but then interviewed and appointments made by the district board. So, and I apologize, there's a typo, and I fixed it after copying, but it should be, shall be interviewed with appointments made by the district board. Yes?
I was wondering why you didn't distribute the alternative that I had sent in on this Article 15.
I didn't do anything other than when we took those questions to Chris Leopold, I just put in his suggestions.
Did you receive from Jill, I sent it to her to forward to this committee.
We can review it tonight.
We can look at it.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have copies of that?
I'm sure I have it on my computer if I don't have hard copy, yeah.
Okay, I thought that would have been
Yeah.
part of, because that raises quite a number of questions on Article 15, and it offers some changes, like it says that there's no reason that a principal should be on the leadership council.
Can we, sorry to interrupt, we're just reviewing all of the changes now, and when we go back and talk about them specifically, why don't you raise your suggestions? Is that all right?
Can we get the copies of that made?
Not tonight, we can't because of those way the school is right now. But I will tell you that an email with suggestions sent to a board member would have to come here to be looked at and decided before it would be incorporated.
So it was not adequate, it was not the right channel
It's
for
not
me to
what
send
we've
it to
done,
my,
right.
to
It's not the procedure we've followed
chair
so
of the
far.
school board, and she didn't.
No.
I forwarded it on to Alice.
Yeah, and then we
And then
talk
what
about,
happened?
we talk
So-
about it here. It's not something that would automatically be typed into this document.
Oh, no,
It's something that
I
we
don't
talk
mean
about.
automatically typed in,
Yeah.
I mean copies that would come with that.
No, it would-
So everybody here can be looking at it as we discuss it.
No, this is the time when we talk about it, and that's what
I
we're
know
gonna
this
do,
is the
right?
time.
Okay.
I'm speaking of copies, paper
I did not
copies.
bring copies. If you had wanted to address it, you would have brought
I
the
needed to
copies.
specifically say that I would like paper copies to
Well,
be
you would have
distributed
brought
to
them,
everybody.
yes.
I
Yes,
was responsible
yes.
for bringing them.
Yeah,
Okay,
so.
I didn't know that's the way you worked here.
So the other two changes as advised are on page 7. They're both in the school closure. The first is a whole sentence strikeout in the second paragraph under section D. I'll give you a minute to find that.
What articles?
This is the school closure article, page 7. It's Article 7, section D, page 7, second paragraph. There's a whole sentence that's been struck out in your draft. Unified Board will thoroughly review the equity to be gained in the decision, ensuring that the affected students would gain from the move and educational opportunities. Chris Leopold felt very strongly that the whole purpose of Act 46 is to ensure equity, and that statement implies that there is not equity, and the school shouldn't be operating if there's not equity already happening. He did say that we could put in something if we wanted to about a reason for closure could be too few students, no longer cost effective, but that equity should be in place if we're going to be running a school. And the other is the next paragraph down. And he suggested striking unless parental choice indicates alternate preference. We already have a parental choice article. It's Article 17. His concern was if a school were to close, parents could then choose at any point to say, our school closed, so this year I'm going to request choice for Dummerston. And next year, I really like the teacher that's in Brattleboro, so I'm going to request choice for my child to go to Brattleboro. What we want is for people to follow the school choice article. So he suggested getting rid of that so that parents don't think they can have a different school choice than what was already stated. So those are the changes.
Okay. So looking down that list of changes, which do we want to discuss? I know we want to do 15. Anything else?
Could I just say about taking that out?
Taking which out?
The, Lyle's
What do you-
last thing about taking out the parental indicates alternate preference. Maybe we could put something in there that, or follow the procedures of school choice, just to make it a little bit more clear that you don't, it's like parents are afforded the opportunity to do the school closest to them, boom, the end. Or follow the school choice as outlined
In Article 17.
in Article 17, so that it's a little more clear that
Otherwise, it could be read as this
this is what-
overruling.
Yeah, and that would be a mess in some ways.
So I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Did you just rephrase?
Yes.
So we're good? You've got it written?
She just said
The
the
school
place
choice. Okay.
of residence, and then inserted or as outlined in Article 17.
Okay. So why don't we go a little backwards? Go ahead.
I was going to say something on the sentence about, but you want
Oh,
to.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
Can you say again the question of the implied inequity in that statement? Because when I read it, even if I will thoroughly review, I would just say equity. To me, it doesn't seem to imply that equity isn't there. It's just that in any decision that you consider the question of equity. How does that imply that there wouldn't be equity? I'm not sure I understand that.
I'm not certain that I can answer that question, other than what Chris said, is that he felt that it implied by stating that we no longer have, the school could no longer provide equity, that if that were the case, the decision should have been made much sooner to close that school. That the whole purpose for running a school is to ensure that there's equity for all students.
I also remember him saying that it's more about the future ability to maintain an equitable educational opportunity is a fine criteria to decide to close a school. So concern about capacity to continue to meet the expectation of a regional system, but if, as Lyle has just said, the implication is that the school's been operating as substandard program. Well, this is not the time and the place to deal with that. That should have been dealt with.
What about what you just said a second ago, which is the futurity of equity?
Mm-hmm.
Could it be reframed as something looking forward? I like the statement there to remind folks that this is about equity, and I know what Act 46 is all about that, but I think having that reminder in the issue of school closure would be a helpful thing, and I like that sentence. But I like what you just said even better.
In the context of ability to maintain equity in the future.
Yeah,
Throughout the district.
Yeah.
I think the problem with the sentence is it's saying that to make sure that equity is being gained.
Yeah.
And that does imply that there is not currently equity. I think what we need to do is reword that sentence to say that we need to make sure that equity is not being lost.
Or,
Right.
equity be retained.
Or maintained.
Or maintained in the
I
future.
think that's his key point was to be, if the structure and the access to education is compromised to the point that that system cannot maintain equitable educational opportunity, then it's a good criteria for closing.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe if we have other questions, we could ask Chris if he sees this as causing a problem from the state board's point of view a little later on a phone check-in.
But Richard, are you suggesting that we
I-
phrase what Frank just said? Put that in there?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. I think that the reminder there is an important piece. And
Well-
I know it's all about equity, but again, to say it.
So maybe we can get his wording.
Yeah, because you
So-
said it as a future, maintain it in the future, and I think that gets it.
So let's just do that rather than,
Right, so the
Yeah.
unified board will thoroughly review the ability of the school to maintain continued equity
In the future.
in the future,
Educational-
or in educational
in
opportunities?
equity, period.
Period.
Or equity,
Yeah.
period, okay.
Does that work for everyone?
Yes,
Okay.
except, so, but the sentence before now makes kind of no sense, because the unified board will weigh the benefits of a school's presence in a community with the gains.
There's gains the first time.
So we're saying gains there.
Maybe just take out with again.
Weigh the benefits.
Yeah.
Presence in a
That's right.
community, period.
Period. And you could even put it in addition, just to mark that break. That new
Okay.
sentence.
In addition, the unified board.
Yeah, and that sounds better anyway.
And weigh the benefits of the school's presence.
Are you good, Christina?
Okay, so,
Yeah.
it's sort of a weird sentence, because you're weighing the benefits of something. I always think of a sentence as you're weighing the benefits of this with the cost, or you're weighing the cost and the benefits, right, Frank? That's what you do?
Yeah.
So it's a weird sentence, just linguistically to me. What are we weighing the school's presence in the community against these other things we're talking about here,
Yeah, it's
above
really-
now?
It's really evaluate.
So do we want to change way
Evaluate.
to consider?
It's really consider or evaluate.
Yeah.
I think it's
We'll
been
evaluate the
so many
benefit.
times since I originally wrote it that it probably made more sense originally.
We'll evaluate the benefits of the school's presence. Does that work?
How about the school's continued presence?
Yes. Okay?
We'll
You
take
got it
into,
all?
we'll take into consideration the benefits of the school's presence in community.
Continued
Or
presence.
continued presence, okay.
And
You
then
think
in
it was this
addition.
complicated in 1776?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
A little bit more.
They were dueling.
No air conditioning.
Well, would you read the next sentence? In addition, the unified board will,
Thoroughly review the school's ability to maintain continued educational equity.
school's ability to maintain
Continued
continued
educational equity.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, are we done with that article?
Did we-
7?
At one point, at the end of the last meeting that we were together on, we were talking about the possibility of requiring a school vote, but not, people didn't like my word vote. A school survey or some sort of formal input from the school.
So that's the last sentence in the second paragraph, is that we could specify, but it says input from the town affected will be formally solicited and shared publicly.
Is that specific enough for what
Right.
people wanted?
I guess that's fine. Are you thinking,
I just wanna make people happy.
yeah.
I don't have any thoughts on that.
Any proposals, or shall we move on?
I'm happy with it.
Okay. Okay, so nothing before that, right? So what's next, Lyle? Is it 15?
Yep. That's page 9 at the bottom. We should do first.
So is this the point, Spoon, when you have some things to, is this when, on Article 15, you had some ideas you wanna?
Yeah, but I don't have a hard copy.
Do you have his copy on your computer?
Be tricky to find, but I will look.
You want to quickly? Thank you. Well, but let's start, while Jill looks, let's address Chris's suggestions.
So his first was to ensure that it's not considered a de facto school board, that we strike clerk.
Which would not mean that they do not take minutes.
Nope, it would mean that it could be rotating at every minute, at every meeting, you would say, who do we have who will volunteer to be clerk?
Okay. So does anyone have, well, let's keep going, I guess.
Capital R, capital R. And the other one is as identified below, so he suggested that we specify.
Who the members are? I thought, and we did not do that?
Didn't we do that at one point in one
Well, I
version of
thought we
this?
did.
Well, so the sentence before that says that they will be made up of the school principal, staff, and community members. And then the first paragraph after the bulleted paragraph says that it shall include one staff member nominated by the respective school staff and appointed by the district board chair, 3 community members nominated at town meeting, with appointments made to the district board and the school principal. And then it talks about the student representation as necessary.
So is it as simple as putting the paragraph
Ahead of it.
ahead?
Yeah, it might be.
Does that work for everyone? I know, Spoon, we're gonna review your notes, but does that work for everyone right now?
You could do that, but you could also just bullet it if you wanted to.
Right.
She'll include, you know, one staff member nominated by the Berkshire Schools. Just bullet it out.
Yep.
Okay,
Is that
Be
fine?
clear.
okay. Okay.
I'm not sure what you're doing, Alice, exactly.
So underneath on page, sorry.
Go ahead.
On page 10, under the bulleted section, there's that paragraph that really lays out the members of the leader. We're going to move that and bullet exactly who those members would be.
So you're gonna put it in front of the bullet.
Yeah. Yeah, so there'll be 2 bulleted sections in that article, one before the other.
Okay. And this will probably take a moment or two to chat about, but the Leadership Council shall include yada, 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 3 community members nominated at town meeting and shall be interviewed with appointments made by the district board.
Can you explain that?
Thoughts?
Yeah, explain again the why of that.
So he had a couple of questions about that. One being, what if the town nominates 4 people? Because they really think all 4 of them should
Right.
be part of
We had
it.
talked about that before,
We
and
had.
we never came to a
Right.
conclusion of what would happen, so that.
Right.
And this is his legal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right,
Yep.
right. He said, so all 4 of them can go and be interviewed by the board, and then it's the board appointing. He also wanted to make sure that that they're nominated, but they're not elected, because this is not a school board. So,
Makes sense.
He also mentioned that it's important that representation on school issues occurs at a school board meeting, as opposed to, you know, all of this happening out, you know, forming a structure that is completely outside of the school board, you know, warned meeting. So again, bringing it into a context of school, you know, under the domain of the school board is the governing body.
Okay. I can follow his logic on that. Can you?
It says here 3 community members, it doesn't say 4. So I don't see any reason for the interview, unless you change that. Because it specifically says 3 community members nominated at town meeting.
I think the concern was if the town nominates 4.
But
But the town.
it says that 3 community members should be nominated, so I think that has to be. Because that way you get 3 that the town wants. You don't get 4 or 5 or any more that the board might not like the viewpoints of one of them, where the town thought that was the number 1. So,
But we did have that conversation that a town can do what it will do, and there ought to be something that would be in place to, if they were to say, well, there are 5 nominations, we're gonna send all 5 forward.
Right,
The
yeah.
town, because that was, I remember that conversation being complicated, because we would expect them to do 3, but what if they did, what if they
Right,
did
what
5?
if the town wanted,
So I think we go
And
back
can I
to-
just throw, and what if the town felt like there were 5, more than 3 who were qualified?
right,
I do,
Isn't that the same for anything? That, 5 people wanna be on?
yeah,
I guess the problem is because they're elected. I mean, like if you have 5 people who say, I wanna be coal surveyor or whatever it is that we never use anymore, but we still elect. So.
But
the
we're not
problem is
electing
We're
them.
electing them in those cases, so we eliminate down from the 5 people who wanna do it, and we elect one,
Yeah.
and that's the person who's voting. So the problem here is we can't elect them.
Right.
So we could come up with more, even though, I agree with Jody, if it says in there, we're gonna take 3, then the town should send 3.
but so then,
charge.
how would the town, I mean, I guess I'm thinking you're sitting at town meeting and you get 5 nominations, then what do you do?
I think then the town meeting, we say, okay, so the articles of agreement say you have 3. What is the consensus of the group?
And then you'd have to have a vote or something, is that?
Yeah, and that's
Well,
what,
you
And
can't
that's
have a
what we
vote.
have to avoid.
That's what we have to avoid is
this
a
is
vote.
complicated. I
So
know.
if 5 are nominated at town meeting, then and you can't have a vote at town meeting,
Yeah.
then you'd have to send all 5, right?
I don't understand, I need to hear again why the town can't elect it.
Because this cannot be a de facto school board. These
Well,
are
it's-
not elected officials, these
No.
are,
But they're being elected to the leadership council, not the school board. So how could they possibly be?
he was very clear that we cannot elect, the town cannot elect these people, because it's a different charge when you're elected than when you are serving as a volunteer member.
And it's essentially a subcommittee, right, of the
Yeah.
school board, so.
It is a subcommittee, yeah. Yeah. So can we articulate our question for Chris on this?
You
'Cause-
know, what happens if more than 3 members are nominated?
Okay. So can you text him that?
I'm not sure why a town can't vote on who to nominate. That's not an election, that's a vote on a nomination.
That might be the question, how it is articulated from the
Yeah.
floor.
I think that's the question, is can you vote on the nomination?
Could they vote on who they appoint, because they're not elected?
But they're not appointing.
They're not
They're
appointed.
nominating.
Voting on a
They're
nomination, I like
Yeah.
voting on a nomination.
Yeah.
Voting on the nomination.
You want to use this. Okay, so that's going to be a question for him.
Can I muddy the waters further? What if the town wanted to have 5 people on a leadership council because they have like an academy school which has so many students and they have so much work?
Or they have a huge renovation project or something,
Yeah.
I think they need extra people.
It's sort of a little odd that we're saying that a community, the size of Dummerston could have 3, well, I guess it's school-based, but
Yeah.
that if Academy
For
wanted.
that matter, it's a
Or if
little
there's
odd that we're mandating what they can have at their own town
Yeah,
leadership
level.
level, right?
Yeah,
So maybe that's the question.
Do we have to-
control that? People can have whatever they want on their leadership council,
yeah,
right?
it seems like if you wanted to have two faculty members, why not have 2 faculty members?
So maybe we could change all of our wording to say we suggest that a leadership council include the following people. And then we could still say that we want input from one leadership council person coming back to the board. And how did that work in the end? For people, if we have a merged board, how do we get the representative onto the leadership council?
How about we,
So I'm
can I
yeah.
just make a suggestion, how about we say at least 3 community members nominated at town meeting?
I think for Brattleboro, honestly, 3 for each school, plus
Yeah.
EES, it's a lot of people. We're
It is a
talking
lot.
about- We're talking about 12 people for EES and our 3.
Well, can you just take out all that and just say what the leadership councils do, but don't specify what they will be made up of?
Well,
Right.
maybe to do that would be just to eliminate the numbers, right? Leadership council shall include staff members appointed nominated by the respective school staff and appointed by the district board chair. Community members nominated at town meeting,
Yeah.
interviewed by the board, if we want to say that.
Basically, we want these communities to be sure to be represented.
Right. And they can come up with what they want that to look like.
Okay, does
Maybe
that
a
work?
sentence that says.
Yeah.
And how is the high school represented? I forget.
It's the same way.
Yeah. They have a leadership council.
How do we, at town meeting, nominate, do we have 3 from each town? How do we nominate,
Good question.
how do we nominate
That's a good question.
a high school board?
Just
Basically, a
like
high
you
school
do now,
leadership council.
Yeah,
just like you do now,
High school leadership council
same way
is
you
gonna
elect.
have 3 community members
We just get rid of the number.
nominated at town
We
meeting.
just got rid of the number.
Numbers, so just we'll have community members.
So every town gets to throw as many
If
community
they
members.
want to nominate somebody for the high school board, they would do it at town meeting.
right.
So they would make nominations for their
So be
local
careful
school.
though, there's no board, it's a leadership council.
Right.
Is that what I said? I'm sorry. So they would make a nomination for their leadership council, for their local council, and for a member of a high school.
So we would just do one from each community for the high school? That's the
No
idea?
number, no number. Just you can take nominations for people for the high school council.
And then the consolidated board would do the putting together of that, to make sure that.
The merger, the consolidated board of everybody, so that after all the town meetings, they're gonna get all these nominations, and it'll be, okay, so this year we have a lot of interest from Brattleboro's, we have 6 people that would like to be on the high school leadership council, but we didn't have anybody come forward from Guilford. So then the board has to deal with it and go search for somebody if they feel it's important for Guilford to be represented, or however it works. We leave it to the unified board?
We do.
Yeah, I think that
it's,
then, I would imagine that the Guilford representative on the district board would go back to the town and the community and try to rally up support for a leadership council.
And if you had a year where there wasn't anybody, you would go with what the other members of that group would look like.
So what do we have now? Where do we stand now? That a leadership, there's gonna be a leadership council for each school that still exists. And that leadership council will be made up of as many people as that town would like to have them. Which sounds fine to me.
Yeah, I think that's what we just proposed, right? You put no numbers on it.
Yeah, I can't see any necessity for the size of these councils to be consistent from town to town.
We would just need to make sure in whatever articles that were in front of the towns at town meeting included the potential to make a nomination for the high school council and for the local council, because I think if you forgot to put in the language on the high school, it could easily get overlooked at a local town meeting.
Would we maintain the ability of the district board to do the appointing if the towns are doing the nominating? And if that's the case, there may be situations where a board might say, could someone move from this? Oh, yes, you could do that. Because
You can move them down to high school.
from town, yeah, I mean, there would be some movement around. We got all these people who want to do this. That really is an unwieldy leadership council from our perspective as that particular board. They still have that power to appoint.
When we looked at
That's a
this
question.
earlier, my thought was, I was most concerned not about the number of community or parents and such, but the breakdown, so that we had somebody being a parent, to me, at least one or two makes a lot of sense to me, and staff, and the administrators, and the community representation, so that it's not just one side looking at things. So to me, numbers, I'm perfectly fine to give up, but what was important was balance.
With the pieces, yeah.
There isn't parent dictated in this language, but.
So I suggest we put that back in, that we had that at one point. Am I imagining that, or did anybody else?
I actually don't think we ever had the word parent in there.
I think we're putting community members, just kind of assuming that parents would probably be the most interested community members in the schools.
So I'd like to advocate for putting parents in there specifically.
Parents and other community members?
Well, focus of where I think Kim took this from something she'd seen, but also then we were kind of modeling after what is at the early education, or early Head Start and Head Start. And the mandate from the federal level for that is a community representative and parents, that they're separate. In that the idea being that the parents would be the ones that are day-to-day interacting, but that the community would see the overall need. I mean, that's easier to see, well, you know, the community be aware of the kids are running around after school with nothing going on and we need to look at the school's policies on this, or the community be aware of kids are graduating from the high school and they don't have these basic skills. So that's.
So what language do you want us to use?
Just insert the word parent.
Parents nominated that, or?
So I have parents and other community members nominated them.
Okay, sounds good.
I have all of the documentation here, but I don't know how to print.
Are you talking about the spoons? Okay, well, I want to make sure that we're all good on
Can I just ask a
parents.
question, one more piece about the parent? That would also mean that a parent, when we talk about the school choice option, there will be parents who aren't part of the immediate community of the school, and that would allow a parent to participate who is not living in that town.
Folks, we have a question from the floor. Should I take it or now? Okay, if it's quick, and then we're gonna talk to Spoon about his.
Sure, and I ask it now just because I have to leave early tonight, and that's McGillian from Dummerston. My only concern about the way, or one of my many concerns about the way this article is written is that it seemed by giving the super board the power to appoint after the towns nominate, it's unclear, and I'm concerned that it may also give the super board power to remove a member of the local council, because one of the benefits of being in an elected position is that you can't be removed from an elected position. And I don't know what the motivations are for Chris Leopold rewriting it this way, but it certainly gives the super board potentially more power to remove and also elect amongst people nominated by the towns, people that it would prefer. So I don't know if that's something that you've discussed. I haven't heard it discussed before, whether you want to limit the power of the super board to remove somebody nominated by the towns. Because the interview and appointment power inherently under municipal law would include the power to remove. So if you don't want the super board to have that power, that's something you might want to discuss.
Is this a question we should ask Chris, or does anyone? I think the language does not address it, so I'm assuming that the board would not remove someone nominated.
Well,
So it's not a concern I have, but hold on, if there are members of the committee who are concerned, we can certainly ask him.
Well, we did actually discuss this before, and that's why we added the 1-year terms. Appointed to the district board to serve for 1-year terms.
Okay. Is that followed?
So that answers what you're saying?
No, it doesn't take care of the question because it could be a 1-year term, but it doesn't mean that the board doesn't have the power to remove them. The same way, I don't know, a principal can give somebody a 1-year teaching contract, the principal still has the power to fire them.
So I'm keen on asking a question to
Yeah, I'm
Chris.
fine with that.
Fine.
Let's ask
Okay.
and see. I mean,
I would suspect his answer is going to be that the school board can do exactly what you're worried about.
Yeah, that would be my.
and if that's the case, what do we think
And that given that it's not a board,
of leadership council?
that the leadership council is not a board, that there probably is no way to do what you're asking. It's worth asking, but my guess is his answer is going to be, that's why it's not a board. Right, because the board you couldn't do that if it was an elected board, but if it's not that, especially since we use the language, and that came from our previous conversations, the language of nomination, not the language of appointment.
I think you hit the nail on the head.
Well, you did. Yeah.
But so my question still stands. Do we care if the merged board for the entire supervisory union, do we care that they can remove somebody? Is that a concern for anybody on this group while we're putting together the articles? That's the basic question today.
Well,
Go ahead.
it sort of is, because we were actually looking for ways to strengthen these boards, and it seems like they're getting weaker. So, yeah, kind of is.
So our preference would be to make it so that once appointed, that person stays on.
Yeah. I'd
No.
like an explanation of how, if the school board cannot remove somebody from a leadership council, in what way has that weakened the school board?
You know,
It's in a-
you want to explain it?
I don't know if I understand the question.
I think Ian was talking about weakening the leadership council, not the school board.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
I feel that
Yes.
this changes
Yes.
weekend the leadership councils
Now I understand.
Yeah, I want to
when
strengthen.
we wanted to strengthen them, yeah.
That's right,
Yes.
okay, I'm sorry.
And Jill, your language about it isn't, they're not, it is, this according to all of it, it is the board that does the appointing.
Right, so I mean, I guess what I'm trying to play out some scenario, because some of these scenarios you guys come up with, there's things that never go through my head. So the only thing I can come up with is say we put somebody on, that's, somebody from the town is nominated, gets onto the, gets in front of the merged board, the board appoints that, recognizing the town's desire. And then as, over the course of the leadership council's discussions, I guess the imagination is that the merged board doesn't like the questions or the attitude or something that that person is doing, and then the merged board says, you're removed. That's the scenario you guys are trying to avoid when you bring this up.
And the other piece that goes with that is also right before the appointment phase, where say someone in Putney is nominated and the board does not do the appointment. Because you can't, since it's a nomination, you can't force the appointment.
Right.
So then actually, in our original discussion of this, we had worded it as a shall appoint,
Yeah.
and that's been taken out.
Yeah.
Right,
For that, for
he took that
this,
out.
for
It's
this
now been
reason.
a shall be interviewed.
Yeah.
So your concern, I know, and Jody and Paul, when you're speaking, your concern is that the merged board, for
Right.
some reason.
Inez.
What's that?
I think Inez has this.
No, all three of them, yeah. But I think,
No, not
with-
my concern.
well, with the questions that you're asking, the concern is that someone is gonna come forward that somehow is gonna rattle the board, and the town wants that person on, and your town's voice is no longer being listened to. That's the concern we're getting at?
Or that they can be removed.
There's two parts of the same thing.
And, no, I mean, it's, I don't know, I think the study committee could probably insist that the leadership councils are advisory anyways, they have no power anyways, so why shouldn't the towns be allowed to keep their person
Right.
on their advisory council? The board has the power to ignore what the advisory council says. My only concern is that, you know, let's say you get a squeaky wheel that the board doesn't like, and they could refuse to interview and appoint, or they could interview and refuse to appoint. I mean, there's myriad ways that they could not accept a town's will on who the townspeople chose. So, and this is just because if you're giving your super board the power to appoint, right, that inherently includes a power to revoke the appointment. And maybe there needn't be an appointment at all. That might be a question for Mr. Leopold. Can there simply be leadership councils and they get nominated and?
Yeah, that is a question.
So what was the language before that I think we were all pretty comfortable with before Chris made the recommendation?
I thought way back when we had that language that said that we'll have leadership councils, and he said that they had to be appointed. And I don't remember the reason why, but it doesn't
I
sound
think
like
you're right
something
there.
that our group would have said, well, let's make it get appointed by.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that sounds like something he
Yeah.
probably told us we had to do.
I'm just suggesting that if we are comfortable with the previous language, then we can go ahead and keep it,
We don't know
right?
what it was.
Well,
Article-
he's looking for it.
Article,
Can you wait a sec?
15?
Article 15.
Yeah.
This is from June. Is it not far back enough?
I don't know.
I think
It's actually in March.
March, I was gonna say March.
I always think of how cold it was outside when we were.
March?
So,
You know, I'll play a little
Let me go
devil's advocate if I can while he's looking. You know, while I understand Inez's concerns, I also don't think that a unified board would be able to get away with doing something like that, that there would be a huge public backlash, and it's, would be akin to like the thing that's going on with the circus arts place, you know, it's.
I would agree, that would be my position.
Yeah.
But if there's concern,
So-
let's see what the language was in.
Yep.
So here's January of this year, is that all right? So leadership councils shall include one staff member nominated by the respective school's staff and appointed by the district board chair, 3 community members nominated at town meeting and shall be appointed by the district board to serve for 1-year terms, and the school principal. Additionally, the school principal may select a student representative for participation as appropriate or necessary for his topics. So that sentence is,
It's still in there.
it's still there. And
But it's
it-
different, shall be interviewed, so there's a suggestion.
But the
of-
appointed part
The
is
appointed
there,
part
that they're
is still
appointed
there.
by the district.
I
We
mean,
go
I
back
think that was
further.
way back, like January
So-
of
The previous year?
Isn't the real issue that we're coming to is that we would like the local leadership councils to kind of be able to act, but kind of on their own, that they get their own people, whoever they want to have on them should be by the local town's decision, that they shouldn't be removed by somebody else, that should be a local town decision. So maybe that's what Chris was getting at a long time ago and not even wanting us to put the leadership councils in here. Because his envisioning was that they actually happen kind of on their own, because it's each school community. And we didn't want to do that because we wanted to make sure they happen.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what would preclude a community from just self-organizing a group of advocates and attending the school board meeting and advocating for an
Nothing.
issue?
Nothing.
And I think that was a point was made to us a long, long time ago, that why do we need this? Because that could already happen.
But we wanted it because we wanted to make sure there was a functioning
Right.
group that was looking at the school, that had input from these various
Right.
concerned parties,
And
and that had a feedback channel to the larger board.
And
Yeah,
that
that's
the board had to
structural.
listen to them, or
Yeah.
like had
That
to.
was the real thing, by codifying that
Yes.
right into the Articles of Agreement, it strengthened them and
So
hopefully
maybe
set
we
it up
just
so
get
the
it the
board
other
wouldn't
way,
have to
that we
listen.
make sure
And
that
this is our
somebody
local
goes out.
voice.
Yeah, can we take a pause for a second, because there's a gentleman who's been wanting to, do you want to quickly add something?
Okay, you've sort of gotten into it. I was looking at page 10, and the third paragraph down, which is the one in heavy print and italics, says for the transition year, school leadership councils will be filled by existing town, school, and so on and so forth. I'm just wondering why, with that idea, why you wouldn't just let that first group decide how they were going to bring about their leadership council in the future. I'm not sure I understand why the super board needs to be involved at all. You in fact would be leaving some degree of more local control in the various towns.
I think that in many ways, that's what we've been struggling with all along. Is because we want to do that, right? We want them to articulate what they want as a community.
It's almost like in trying to give ourselves more power, we're working ourselves out of it.
Yeah.
Like, it might be better to do less.
So, having said that, how do we want to address the language in this paragraph?
Wow.
Well, we can leave in the role of the leadership councils, what the leadership councils do, that bullet list. But all language about their makeup or creation, we can simply sum up with wording saying that the towns should decide that.
We could say, within the first year, come up with language about the role of the leadership council in each town that first year is to articulate what their vision or their relationship is.
Do we need to put something in there that would say that the district board, shall accept or not accept, shall hear, or something to the effect that I guess the district board shall actively engage with the district leadership councils or something like
And
that.
individual school leadership council.
Yeah, so maybe that's all we really need, and then we leave it up to the town, the schools to.
What if we leave it up to the town, but we give a suggestion? So we leave everything that's in here, and we say it's a suggestion. It's suggested that the local school-based leadership council do these roles and be made up of these people, and beyond that, mandate that the district board listen to them once a year, or that there's a representative from the district board that goes to the leadership council. I mean, I think that's what we were really wanting to get, was that interaction.
But the problem, the difficulty we're in is if we aren't specific, then the district board can make its own decision.
Right,
Yeah, they can interpret this any way that they want to, and they can change it. And so the more specific we are, the more they will follow that, but at the same time, the more specific we are, the more regulations are on what we're saying.
But isn't the last sentence in Article 15, a unanimous vote of the unified board shall be required to alter or remove? I
But-
mean, if we change something about the leadership councils and how.
But if we don't articulate the makeup of the leadership council, then that doesn't have to be, they can do what they want.
It's almost like all we need is that paragraph prior to the one that you just mentioned that says the district board shall actively engage. That is almost like we will have leadership councils that will be determined by the individual schools, and then that sentence, or that paragraph.
Is that what you're saying?
How about the second paragraph of Article 15, we rework to, school-based leadership councils shall be established at each school to provide local input on school-specific programs and activities. Councils will be made up of, I'd say school administration, staff, community members, and parents. Councils will have a vice chair, and committee representatives as determined by the local community. And then we can strike out the other paragraph entirely.
Yeah.
Well, the bulleted paragraph though was really important to people, because that.
No, keep that.
No,
Okay.
but-
Yeah, no, not the bolded paragraph, the
leadership council.
The leadership
the one
council,
after
sorry.
that, the leadership
Right.
council's going
The
through,
one that
the
we
one
were
that
gonna
details the.
I see, okay.
Okay, does that work for everyone?
So the question I would have then is who does it? When we say the community does it, who does it? Does that mean in the end the principal does it? Does it mean, I mean, I just don't know where the agency would reside.
In procedures determined by the local community?
But,
Who's gonna decide the procedure?
yeah, I mean, I just don't, where does that happen?
Because you need to have the same procedures and all, you know.
Well, I don't know if you need to,
No,
but I don't know if
yeah,
it's gonna
but
happen if you don't.
You
get
need
one.
to have the leadership councils following similar rules for all of the schools. You can't just, there needs to be some structure.
Especially when you're
Them all
thinking
go
about
off.
bands and,
Yes.
I think the only structure necessary is that list of things that's in there now that they can do, is merely to list what a leadership council is entitled to do at least. In other words, this says that the assist in coordinating, provide, I don't know, it doesn't really say anything. It's just, I mean, I would just be saying that each Exton school is encouraged to constitute a council to advise the school board on any matters concerning their school.
We're back to what you were saying before, Richard. The
It's
more we
almost that
try to
simple.
define it,
yeah, but my problem with that though is that it's not concrete enough, and it's not, when I think about it as a Putney resident, I want something much more robust than that. I want an assurance that the district board is going to listen to community members, and that's in these guidelines. I mean, from the very beginning of this was one of the first things that we spent lots of time on, and it was because individual towns felt like they needed to have
And
this.
I think it has to be mutually, the expectation has to come from the board and also from the community.
So then, I mean, there's nothing anywhere that guarantees the school board is gonna listen to anybody about anything. It's just, we just hope that as a board, that's what they see as their responsibilities. But there's no law that says they have to listen or do or anything. Now, maybe it should, I don't know, I need to think this through a little bit more, but I gotta stop here, but I'm not,
Yeah.
I don't see as any problem that, every school will have at least one person on the school board, right?
Every community.
Every community will have. And that is their access to the board, that person or persons. Or they could write or attend meetings that they could send information to on their own. They could appear on their own at school board meetings. But essentially, every community has a representative on the school board, and that is their way of communicating to the school board, as well as people in the community can also show up at board meetings. They can write and left, do it.
Yeah, and I just slightly disagree. I think there really does need to be something more mandated and more structured to make, especially for the smaller towns, to make sure that their voice is heard in a number of ways, especially within the local school itself. And the more I think about it, the more we talk about this, I think it is worth the quote risk of the supervisory board removing somebody or not accepting the nomination in order to have stronger language. If I had a choice between which evil to go with, I would much rather have something spelled out that indicated that there was a community board, a community council that was engaged in the school and had access to the board, even if there would be some juggling around, and again, in terms of how the nomination moves from nomination to appointment. I think that the specifics are too important.
But I like the idea of taking out the numbers.
I do too.
Yeah, so I'd like to push forward with this. Richard, I'm gonna say, so thus far, we've decided to go with Ian's suggestion, a second paragraph of Article 15, community representatives determined by the community, correct? I just want to go through the article.
Parents, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Parents, change that to administrative.
are we comfortable with that, or you're?
I'm going back to the language that we have right now that's more specific about who should be on it, parents and community, that what we already have, I think, is much more inclusive and leads towards better leadership than something that could be nebulous and.
I'm
we're just
okay with
taking out
that
the
if we
numbers.
just take out the
number.
paragraph that we were gonna move up and
Yeah.
bulletize. I'm okay with that if we take out the numbers,
Numbers,
and then it's just up to the town to determine the makeup.
Okay.
But all those pieces are
There's
mandated
a
in the
piece,
language.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable with Richard's suggestion. Do we want to return to the original? Shall we take out "shall be interviewed"?
Are we on page 10, second paragraph?
Right. And that's
Okay.
Chris's suggestion,
I say shall be appointed.
shall be appointed.
Our
Okay.
original wording.
Is that fine? That's that we were comfortable with that language for probably a year and a half or
Yeah.
something. Yeah,
Because the towns.
okay,
Yeah, I think the
And then the
towns
board.
need to,
okay.
this is their voice.
Okay, is there any other language?
Yeah, I just wanna check, is there still an intention to state who should be on the leadership
Yeah.
council? Because I do have a problem with the principal being on
We could say,
Yeah.
Why is,
made up of the school administrator instead of principal, is that?
it. Well, I don't even think a school I think, as I wrote in my paper, which I don't know if you all read, maybe not, that my experience, for instance, on the finance committee is that there was a standing invitation for the town finance director to attend, and the finance director would always leave that slot open. And they would come to the finance committee meeting, and we would share whatever we needed to share, and we'd say thank you, and they would leave. And then we would continue to conduct our business. I think the principal is a resource. The principal is working for the superintendent. Gets hired and fired. And they're gonna wanna see an outcome that they're comfortable with. And they're also gonna have an outsized influence. Now, they will probably be at all the meetings anyway, for most of it, but there'll always be a standing invitation, not a member, when it comes time for the council to make a decision on what they want, on what information they want to forward to the board, it's not going to be the principal's opinion, it's going to be the parents or whoever else is on it.
But isn't
Okay.
it just one voice on a larger committee?
It is only one voice, but it's not, in a meeting, and I've just, seen this my whole life, is where this sort of control is kind of deferred, I always feel like that person the principal should always feel that he or she is invited, they're a guest. And they will contribute everything that they might have in any case anyway, but they will always be a guest, an invited guest. And to make it clear that what the parents want for their schools is what the parents want for their schools. They may not even, the parents might even want to recommend that the principal be fired, which would be very awkward if the principal had to vote on that.
So guys,
But the leadership council doesn't have voting privileges,
I
or,
know that, I know
they're
that.
not.
So, that's not a good example,
Yeah.
but it should be, what we're trying to do is say that the parents or whomever gets on that, they're capable of deciding what they want for their school. And they will make that decision with advice and with the input of the principal if they want it, of the school board member if they want it, of the superintendent if they want it. They will invite whomever they wish to get information from.
thank you, Spoon.
Period.
Is there interest in changing the language? Because if there is, then.
I hadn't even thought about it before, but I'm not sure that I fully agree with your point, but another issue with having the principal there is it right for us to mandate what a principal does with their free time? Because they're not getting paid for that.
And same with the staff.
Yeah.
I think yes. I
Yes,
actually think we
I
have the
think
right
that's
to do
part of the
that.
job.
If we say part of it is the way in which you engage in the community, and that we are indicating how that engagement needs to take place, I think it's part of the job.
They attend school board meetings already.
Already.
So they wouldn't be attending that, I don't anticipate seeing every one of the principals at every one of the district boards.
Yeah, it would take
Yeah.
forever, that meeting.
So guys, if there's an interest, hold on a sec, if there is an interest in changing the language, I would imagine there should be a motion, so we can entertain that at some point in the next few minutes. But right now, Lyle is texting Chris on a couple issues.
Yeah, thank you. By the way, I'm Ken McCaffrey of Brattleboro. A piece of information for you. I serve on the Brattleboro Citizen Police Communication Committee, and often has members of the public there. And we also have to enhance communication, which sounds like what you're talking about. And we also have Captain Carrigan is a regular member. We've even had the chief once or twice. Here's my message to you. At that time, he is a guest. And a couple of times when we've had some public members who've raised questions of one sort or another, he has emphasized that he is a guest to them and defers to the chair to carry on. So your comment made me think of that. That's how that committee functions.
Can I,
Yeah.
I guess the differences for me in what both your example is about the financial and the town and the school,
Please.
police safety? Is that, so,
Communication, that's why it says
Right.
sounds like what you're talking about.
but, what I'm envisioning the leadership council doing is having a discussion, I'm gonna use the school my kids were in, so Academy School, and we're gonna sit down and talk about how, it's so exciting that the grades have been going, or their test scores have been going up, and what else can we maybe do on that, and so we wanna have some staff input, and then the parents throw out some stuff about what they're wanting to think, and then the principal can put in stuff. So it's a collaborative effort of everybody that's working for the good of those kids in that school.
Right.
And the growth of that specific school, so I can't, it doesn't equate to putting the principal in as a guest, because the principal is the leader of that school.
That's what I was gonna say, by definition, a leadership council, isn't the principal the leader of the school?
Yeah, I don't
To me,
understand how to
it
not
would-
have them here.
And that's, you almost hit my point exactly, is that the principal is expected to be viewed as the leader. And I'm saying that the members of the community can choose their leader.
Yeah.
They can choose it. It's not, so we wouldn't state that a principal must be a part of a council. That will be, they will choose, the council will choose if they wish to have a principal there.
I guess I'm still saying that the principal is fundamental to get anything done in the
Yeah.
school. I think of the way at Academy School for years that I've been on the parent group. And if Andy had not been sitting there saying, yes, I support this, the parent, we could go off and do whatever we want. But that it needs to be working in tandem with what the leadership of the school, it's an operation of the school. So, for example, at one point, maybe the parents come up and say, you know what? We want to build a new playground, and they fundraise and fundraise and fundraise, and then they bring in structures and such without any discussion with the principal, and then they don't fit, or they aren't appropriate, or whatever else. All of that stuff needs to be done with that. In the actual leadership council, I don't anticipate the principal running the meetings all the time. I mean, he's not the leader of the leadership.
They're not the chair.
They're not
Yeah.
the chair.
But their input, I think, and their participation is vital. One of the things I feel strongly about, that I like on our leadership councils, is having the staff involved.
Yes.
Because right now, in all the years that I've been involved with the elementary school parent group, it's been a bunch of parents and the principal, and rarely, if ever, a staff member. And so then you get everybody all excited, but then it falls back to the principal of saying to his staff and seeing if that'll work. And yeah, that's a good role for him, but if the staff is there and they're enthused, even better. It's that well-rounded look.
What I'm not following is, I'm saying that the leadership council will have a standing invitation and an expectation that the principal of their school will at least begin each meeting at the meeting. But at some point, when that council wants to make a decision about something it wants to convey to the board, the school board, it will make that choice. The principal will not be a part of that choice. The principal may be in the discussion, but when it comes time to vote on whether to go forward with something, the principal will not vote.
So I think we've talked this out enough. Again, if someone can raise a motion later on about this. I'm not sensing that there's an interest in talking about it more at this stage. Lyle texted Chris, he is responding. We're almost at the time where it would be appropriate to vote on the articles, but I think we should hear back from Chris. So I'm going to suggest that we table this for a moment and go on and talk about the two other things on the agenda, and then come back or interrupt ourselves if need be. So right now, is there interest in talking about the Vernon Town School District vote, just rehashing what that means, or is everyone comfortable?
When do they vote?
They're voting today.
It's over now.
Right, so they're counting, or they're, so any interest in talking about that, or can we just move on to review the schedule? Is that all right?
Yep.
Okay, Frank and Lyle, do you want to talk us through the schedule, or should I? Okay.
Sure. You want to pass that around? Is that-
Yeah, so there are two this one, right? Yep. So there are two documents. There's an actual calendar. And then there's a list of, there's a timeline, a draft timeline. And certainly there might be a mistake or two on this, but I think since Barb did it, it's probably pretty solid. But go ahead, Frank or Lyle.
Sure. So, right, today being the 18th, Barb contacted the Board of Ed, and they are meeting the 19th or 20th in there of September. So we would need to have our articles of agreement to them the last week of August, certainly by September 1st, which is the first Friday in September. Barb talked about the 40-30-day window. The 40-30-day window starts on September 28th, the 30-day window on October 8th. The petitions for people running for the unified board would be due on October 2nd. So we would need to be meeting with town clerks sometime at the end of August so we can ensure that those petitions are ready to go out for people running for board seats. With the vote on November 7th, and we had talked about last year when we met with the town clerks, we had talked about having the vote on a day when they're already voting. They requested no because it was a national election. This year we're assuming that without the national election that it would be okay to do this vote on November 7th.
Plus we're giving them much more time.
And we're giving more time.
Last year.
Yep. And so then October 28th starts our 10-day window, and between October 28th and November 6th, each board would have to have a meeting, an informational meeting at their town.
Good.
Yep.
So this is based on us, I believe, meeting on the 24th after all the boards have met to review the articles. Putney will be meeting on this Thursday. What day are you're doing the 22nd or something?
23rd.
No.
26th of July.
No, July.
You just have to, have met by August 24th.
We are
Are you
meeting
guys good?
So we
August
just,
23rd.
we just met last night and
Yeah.
reviewed the articles, and that Lyle had presented the changes already
Great,
to us.
so you're good.
So we're good.
We're meeting
Um,
in July.
The 23rd, right. That's why we schedule it the 24th, because you guys will have just met.
You're
But
meeting
we're
July.
also meeting in July
Okay.
because you said it had to be done before that. So we
Right.
scheduled another meeting specifically for this.
Good, okay.
And because we have some hiring.
No, there is that. Okay, and Brattleboro?
That's
That is Brattleboro.
Brattleboro Union High School, sorry.
Believe we do have a meeting before that,
Okay.
although we're not one of the town boards, so we don't really get
You
input.
contribute that, it's your job to bring information back, each board has to bring information back who's a part of this. You guys? You're good, yeah. Okay, so everyone should hold on to the 24th?
Do we know, like 6 o'clock where?
She's,
Oh, this, yeah.
That's right, yeah.
So the week of the 27th, Lyle, Frank, and I will be meeting with the town clerks.
Wait, 24th of August or July?
4th of August.
Yeah.
So you have to meet before that.
Okay?
Yeah.
Is just wanting to give everyone the heads up that that meeting is gonna happen that week. All right? All right. Have we heard back from Chris? Okay. So let's hear what Chris has to say and then we'll move forward.
So, he does think that the board would be able to remove members. He would advise the board to adopt a code of conduct to address issues that might justify dismissal, failure to attend meetings, violating confidentiality, and that was one question that they sent.
Mhm.
Okay. And his other was that we would nominate members to a BU6 the same way we would with any school at a town meeting.
Okay.
Nominate what?
We were asked a BU6, like a high school and a BAMS faculty council, we would nominate those people at a town meeting,
So like what we talked about.
like what we talked about.
Okay, so do we want to put in language about code of conduct or not get into that level of detail?
There is an established code of conduct already for school boards.
Yes.
We could say just utilizing, or it's expected that the same code of conduct that's approved by the Vermont School Board Association would apply to leadership council.
Where do you,
About the same code of conduct that's adopted by the unified board.
There we go.
there you go.
Perfect.
Where do we want to put that language?
At the
Last
bottom-
line.
Last line, at the,
Just stick it in there.
yep. Or actually before the unanimous vote line.
Okay.
Yeah.
Although being unelected, I don't think the advisory council would actually have access to confidential information.
Yes, they do,
Yeah.
because they have a person that's coming back from.
The school,
Oh,
Interview,
Right.
process.
Well, they're on the
Faculty
interview committee,
council.
so
Oh,
they,
by
very
interviews,
much
they
so.
would, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
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 Okay, does that work for everyone? You,
How about we put it in as a responsibility that they shall abide by a
Oh, that's
code
good.
of conduct established by the
Bulleted
unified
list.
Mhm.
board.
Is this Article 15?
Article 15, page 10, top of the page, just gonna insert that in that bulleted list.
all right? Okay, is there a motion to approve the articles of agreement?
And I had a couple of,
Can you wait until we open it up to the public?
on the articles of agreement, before you approve them, I had 2 comments.
What were you gonna say?
It's just a motion though. We can discuss.
Yeah,
after the
okay,
motion's
yes.
made.
I have 2 comments that I'd like to see changed in the articles of agreement.
Okay, why don't you quickly share those with us now?
Okay, the first one is on page 3, and it's at the bottom of page 3, and I do not think that it is accurate. The property tax relief offered during the first 4 years of operation and the transition grant will lessen the burden of our taxpayers. Rebecca and Donna and everybody else have said this money is not tax relief. It's not incentives anymore. It is operational to change the operations of the district. So I don't think we can say in the page 3 that it's going to lessen the burden of the taxpayers.
And what's your second comment?
My second comment is the same one I've been making over and over and over again. For the small schools, I think we need to put something in there that you can have a vote by the electorate to close the school or to get rid of the 7th and 8th graders. I can see the board saying, oh, BAMS doesn't have enough students. We're going to take Putney and Dummerston's 7th and 8th graders, or the middle schoolers. And I don't think that is anything that the communities want. And as far as closing a school is concerned, I went through several of the other articles of all the towns around us. They all have a vote from the town on closure. Twin Valley, Southern Valley, which is Halifax, Reedsburg, and Stanford, WNESU, Leland and Gray on school closures, Marlboro, Dover, and Wardsboro, and I think, if I read my handwriting, it's UDSR or something or other. I'm not sure what it is, but they all do have strong school closures that end, and I'd like to have that in here, as well as our 7th and 8th graders, because I know Putney and Dummerston do not want to get rid of their 7th and 8th graders. And I don't want the board saying, we want you down in BAMS, because make BAMS more profitable. I don't want the board, not you, the board to say, taking our students and then saying our school is not large enough to support, and we're going to close Guilford, and we're going to close Putney, and we're going to close Dummerston, because we don't have the 7th and 8th graders. So I think it's very important to these
Thank you.
towns to
Yeah,
have
that's
that.
you've
Just a quick
expressed that
point of
many
fact,
times.
because
Yeah.
Guilford does not currently have 7th and 8th graders,
So
so.
take it on later, but they're already, because they don't have, they're already at a minimal thing, and that's a problem.
Not because of our high school.
Okay,
Not
thank
because
you.
of the school.
All right. So if anyone's interested in incorporating any of Jody's suggestions, feel free. But I would be very happy to hear a motion about the articles.
I would just like to open up Spoon's discussion for 1 second about the principal. Could we leave it up to towns if they wanted to include a principal in it as an advisory role, and just change it to staff member, and then the principal, you know,
I'd be more inclined to say administrator
administrator.
and staff.
And you had said administrator, I changed
Okay.
So right now, it does say administrator.
administrator.
So it's
So-
not saying a principal. In a case like BUHS, there's various.
So what does it say right now?
Right now, it says councils will be made up of the school administrator, staff, community members, and parents.
Okay, so you're not comfortable with that?
No, I'm not uncomfortable or comfortable. I'm saying that why not leave it up to communities if they feel like, I mean, it's hard to imagine, we get along famously with our principal, and everything is copacetic. She doesn't sit on the board, but it's a great advisory role, but things are different, and communities wanted to change that for some reason. I don't know, who are we to say, you know, giving communities flexibility?
I go right back to, I think, what Jill was saying, that you have to, it has to be a partnership. It is just a partnership, and they need to be there. Not necessarily running it, hopefully not ever running it,
Yeah.
but being there as a resource to the community so that solid educational decisions can be made for their community and their children.
I think I'm okay with it because it's one voice on a larger board, they're not the chair, so I'm okay with that requirement, I guess.
Okay.
Nothing bothering me.
I am as well.
I view it as driving blind if you don't have that person there.
Well, she's not a member, you know, Joe Carroll's not a member of our school board, she's absolutely 100% a partner in the meeting, so like, it just, I don't know, it just depends on how, if the community.
But this
views
is
it.
not this isn't a policy making, or it isn't a real decision-making body. They don't have that type of authority. So why not make them an equal partner so that, you know, you can promote that collaborative effort and look for the continuous improvement in your school communities.
And I would think it becomes an essential quality of a principal to be able to be collaborative and be a partner.
Yeah.
All right. Is there a motion?
Before we do a motion, I thought we were also going to hear if anybody has come up with any other great ideas from any of the school board activities or different groups that are meeting.
Do we want to do that now, or, I mean, it's not, whatever we hear from the public at the end, I'm not sure if that would,
Well, if they
does
had-
that address
If they had
what we're doing
anything
right now?
that should go in here right now, that they've come up with, and, like, I know Dummerston's group, I looked to you, Christina, because I know you've been meeting with folks that have been thinking of other things.
I don't think it really applies to this. I mean, the one thing that we've asked about a bunch of times is an escape hatch that I'm not sure we've ever gotten a real, like, you know, is there a way to write an escape hatch for towns? I think that would make people much more interested in moving forward if this wasn't.
We have talked about that.
I don't think we've ever gotten back to Chris Leopold though.
Yeah, we have.
And gotten. a
He
rule
said
that
it's
knows-
statute, it's dictated by statute.
Yes.
Yeah, we
tried
tried.
to come up with something else.
No, we tried to do something else. but-
So the answer is that if a town wants to get out, they'd have to do what Vernon is doing now. And, well, what they did do and failed, not what they're doing today, because that's a state mandated statute. But what
Yes.
was going on before. That's the answer from Chris?
Mhm. Yes. We've heard, I think we've talked to him about that twice now.
I make a motion to approve the study committee report and articles of agreement dated July 12th, 2017.
As amended.
As amended tonight. Thank you.
And is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion?
I'd just like to note,
Yeah.
for the record, that, as pretty much everybody knows, I do oppose merging. I do support putting a merger to a vote, because I think the people should get a say in that and decide it. So I support not the merger, but the vote.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great.
Can I make a statement?
Sure.
Of course, as you all know, I'm relatively new, just starting in March. And I knew just a trifle about the whole Article 46 before then. If there's one thing I have never seen, and nobody has claimed that it even exists, are any studies that show that the kids in Dummerston and Putney and Marlborough and Vernon and Guilford have done any worse in life or are any less happy about their lives than the kids that went to Brattleboro. So, on the one hand, this whole thing seems utterly fabricated and useless. I don't see any particular harm, any more harm, given the state. I don't think the kids are going to be any less educated or any more educated after all this is over, one way or the other. And having thought of this, I actually went to some legislators and said, how did this get passed? And I won't go into that, but the story I heard was not appealing. And, where did this whole Act 46 idea come from? Where did it emerge from? And how did it somehow wend its way through the legislature? But here it is. And something, so as far as I'm concerned, the least possible changes that could be made is the most I would do to conform to the statute. Period.
Does anyone want to respond to Spoon, or? Yeah.
So there's this, and Spoon and I have talked, so it's not gonna be a surprise, just Spoon, whatever I have to say here. But, in studying all of this, we came together almost 2 years ago now. We've been together for a long time. And when I first came into this, I thought this was a no-brainer. Sure, we'll all put ourselves together, and I kind of envisioned an entirely different thing where we just all pay out in taxes and understand that it would be all one budget and all that. So as we go through it, I've gone back and forth on what it is. But the one thing that has, your opening statement that the kids in Brattleboro versus Putney versus Dummerston, never have I felt that we've said throughout this that Brattleboro has wonderful, absolutely perfect system, and that Putney's bad and Dummerston is bad, or Guilford or anybody else. But what became really clear to me is that we have inequities, and that you can say that, okay, does that make a difference in the outcome in the kids? Yes. It has made a difference. We've looked at it, and specifically in Guilford, they would say definitely it's made a difference in not having some of the programs that we've had in Brattleboro. I know Putney's sitting there saying, gee, if we can have universal meals like we do in Brattleboro where the kids don't pay, they would love to have that. I've heard from Dummerston parents and Dummerston folks that have come that they would love to have foreign education, but it doesn't fit into their budget with the constraints that are given right now. So we're not equal, but that doesn't mean that everybody is not equal in the same way. And it never has meant to me that any one school was perfect and any one school was terrible. But I see this merger as a way to letting us move forward and making it more equitable. And at the same time, I'm pretty convinced that we can save some money off of it from the numbers that Frank has brought forward. And that's a good thing.
Before we hear from the public, Amy, sorry, can I move on? Before we move from the public, hear from you guys, do you guys want to chip in and just let us know what Dummerston is working on, or?
I'm not involved with that, because
Yeah.
neither has that, so maybe she fills in.
So we've had a group of school board members, community members, looking at other ways, and there's several groups throughout the state that are doing this. It's been a really nice, not only cross-fertilizing with our own district, but really hearing what's going on in other districts. John Castle, up somewhere up there, has been talking with us about things that they're doing there to try to make things work better, and really trying to identify the things that are going to make our district better, improvements that we could make, but trying to find other ways to do it without merging. As well as taking a good, serious look at how Dummerston itself is complying to the goals of Act 46. So we've gone through that initial part that would have to be part of an alternative governance structure if Dummerston were to go as a standalone unit. So we put a lot of time into saying, what is the quality, what is the variety of program? And I do think it's a little, it's been really good to look at both sides of equity as the goals of Act 46 dictate, not just programming, because that's the low-hanging fruit a little bit, but the quality of the programming and what is valuable to our community and where we think the community would really support the increase in variety of programming, and try to find other ways to do that. We've done a lot of looking at agency funds as a way to share teachers. We have done a very good job as a district, I think, of sharing teachers. And the way we've been doing it, local communities have their ability to do it, but maybe an agency fund ability to hire and fire teachers if teachers don't work out, which we think is an advantage to the local schools. But an agency fund might make that easier. Other districts have looked to make the superintendent's job easier by creating, I think this is Washington Central, is creating their SU board is made up of all their local school boards so that they have a proportional representation, so that the superintendent and the business manager don't have to present all the information that's district-wide 5 or 6 times in a way to save their wear and tear on their vehicles and their personal lives, as well as assure that everybody in the room is hearing what's going on and we can work to address it. Because the best thing about this Act 46 committee is hearing what's happening in the other communities. So that's, and Washington Central has said the same, Washington Southeast.
You mean
Windsor Southeast, that's who it is doing this, sorry.
Which
Too many
communities,
doubles.
Christina? These, for us, we said the best thing about Act 46 is all of us sharing what's going on in the other communities, or you're talking about your
No, I
Act
think for
46
this,
and
for
looking
the
at that.
for the supervisory union, it's very good to hear what's happening in other districts, which I get a sense was not happening so much. And I think that's something I've heard from other districts as well. And so by creating a situation like that, not only is it more efficient use of people's time, but also when inequities are happening, you can react as a supervisory union to try to meet those needs. This is what's happening throughout the state. Dummerston, in our survey last summer, really wanted to work more closely with the SU to try to address inequities and try and improve programming for everyone in the district. And I think that's, trying to find other ways to do it and think creatively about it was 66% of Dummerston wanting to do that. So but they were not really interested in merging governance in order to do it. So trying to find other ways to do it.
We have to remember too that the poll that you took was unscientific. So,
Well,
we went through that before. And has the group ever, will you come up with concrete models that we can pursue? Or, I guess that's what I thought this group might be looking for more.
We want to work with, the whole goal of the alternative governance structure, if we're going to be a unit that works together, is to work together to come out with the ideas. And so the format to do that, we've been working on ideas, we've been talking with other communities to figure out those ideas, as well as we've spent a lot of effort looking at Dummerston to say, are we meeting the goals of Act 46, and doing our own analysis, where are we deficient in meeting the goals of Act 46? Mm-hmm. And where are, I don't think you have better transparency and accountability in a small town than going grocery shopping as a school board member. When there's 5 of you, you're gonna come across them. So there's trade-offs to be made in all this. So, if the goal would be for Dummerston to look at itself and see where we're deficient and see where we're doing well and then have other school boards work with us. And use some of the ideas that I'm hearing from throughout the state, things like agency funds, to make the process of sharing staff.
But I thought agency funds didn't apply. Do they apply to our situation? I thought when we had a discussion here about agency funds, that.
Yeah, they're much more useful in very rural systems like Windsor, Southwest, or Wyndham Central, where you have schools with less than 15 kids per grade level, so that you virtually cannot retain a full-time staff person in pretty much any position in a school that operates with less than 60 kids. So in those, it's sort of a last attempt to attract full-time employees and then have them serve the various capacities that public schools have to serve. But in a larger system, it really does, it diminishes the governance. It separates the employee from the school, and that creates all kinds of other complications that are very much counter to the idea of a collaborative, unified, common mission. Because you have an employer and who's separate from the students in the school, community, and the board.
So it might work, an agency fund might work if it was, Dummerston was a standalone, but if it started working with other communities, then it might be more difficult. Is that what you're saying?
You couldn't do it as a standalone because you wouldn't have anybody to be an agency with. You have to have somebody. Oh, you do?
There's no such thing as really a standalone district. You could be part of an SU by law, by statute anyway, so. Unless you're gonna be an independent school, but you're gonna have to be partnered with somebody. I mean, it may be that we're not small enough that we're at that level, and it may not make sense. You know, we're not really, actually, I don't think any of us are very small, are a small school by Vermont standards. Is that true? But
I think the
looking at ways-
larger issue is what Frank is saying, though, I mean, because I wasn't liking this idea of, okay, well, maybe that's one way around this whole conundrum, but from what I understand from what you're saying, Frank, is that, say we all made, instead of a merger, we made an agreement that we'd hire teachers with one group, which in this idea will be the merged unit, but we wouldn't lose our local school boards and we would hire everybody at this level. But then, who's making the decisions of where the teacher is going? It would have to come back to
And
whoever's.
the allocation, I would think, of that fund would still need to be based on a per pupil head count at each individual school, and that's what doesn't work for small schools. So unless you change the funding formula to not be based on student population, I don't think it works.
And that ultimately is the real issue. I mean, and I think if there's, people want school reform that's different than Act 46, that's
Yes, it's
what
the
has to
funding
be
formula,
addressed.
yeah.
Because that's why we're bound the way we are.
Right.
The idea of an agency fund, it's the same thing as the temporary employment agency, you know, temps. That used to be a big thing many years ago when employers were trying to avoid paying employees benefits, so they would go to a temp agency. So you have somebody that has the labor pool, you have a job, you bring in somebody who's on a contract basis through a temp agency, and you avoid a relationship between an employer and an employee. It's not a great way to build a strong workforce who's loyal to your organization.
It's interesting, because a lot of businesses in our town keep on with temp agencies for long periods of time and have very strong relationships with them, and I don't think it would not be a temp agency because we are all part of the same business unit. But, for example, we bring temps on and then we buy them out at the end of it, but their benefits are being paid. We pay for their benefits in essence because we're paying a higher salary for them to get the benefits. But we surely make all the hiring decisions, the see you later decisions, the this is what you're doing today decisions. And it's very much with the exception of, from my perspective as an employer, it's the same as hiring any other employee actually. It's just when payday comes around, I don't have to deal with it. And because I'm dealing with it anyway, it doesn't make fiscal sense for us, but there are a lot of companies now that are running quite, year on end, 5 years, 6 years with the same employees, because they don't want to add the infrastructure to manage that fun part of your job, the whole payroll section, and the constantly changing rules around that. So I don't think so that's what I see as a business owner, that it's a great relationship for a lot of small businesses in our community. It wouldn't be a temp agency, it would be the overarching SU of which we're all part of, so it's not so different.
But then in your example, Christina, you're the employer, so you get to make that decision. You're not the employer, though, in the case of the agency of the school. The school of Dummerston, if they're hiring through the agency, they're not the employer. The agency is the employer, so the Dummerston doesn't get to choose who they hire, they don't get to choose when they're fired, it's being controlled by the agency.
Now, the agency the person doesn't make any money unless they are hired by our company.
Right, so it's just a sort of it's an additional sort of middleman in the process of engaging a teacher and with students. Instead of having a direct relationship with your employee who you hire, you go through a third party and you
I'm
say.
opening it up to the public. Okay. Can
As
we
an employer,
wrap?
as an employer, let me just respond.
Yeah.
As an employer, I don't feel that way, that there's some other, they're a fiscal agent, basically, and managing that. And if I want them to leave, the relationship is entirely how their day is spent, is how the company would dictate. So that's my experience, anyway.
And maybe the temp agency analogy that you offered is not the best one. It seems maybe like more, from my industry, the grocery business, if we look at our vendors. We have a lot of companies that bring in and work their own product in the store. They don't work for us. They're an outside company that hires somebody completely on their own, sends that person in. I have never had any confusion amongst the vendors that we get sent in, who's in charge in our store. And we have good relationships with them. They know that when they're in our store, they run things the way we want it run, and it's not an issue.
Yeah, so we can have a lot more discussion about that, but then you need to move toward a municipal entity and a elected official in a governance structure that, again, as an individual private employer, you can totally ignore. You have no responsibility to the next employer and so on. It's a very different environment in public schools. We're municipal entities, you have a governance structure. That governance structure is required to adhere to statutes that the State Board of Ed provides. That's a very different scenario when you are hiring out your labor to a different entity, an agency that may or may not consider those requirements.
Sort of like, special ed is now parceled out at the SU level, so I think that's kind of the model.
Okay. So let's open it up to the public, and then we'll have final comments by the committee, and then we'll call it a night. Who's interested in speaking? Two? Okay, go ahead.
I'm on the committee, and the Alternative Governance Committee in Dummerston also. I get a little frustrated when we try to talk about these items in this particular group that we get from Frank or anybody else, the negative that we can't do this, we can't do that. In our group up in Dummerston, we are looking at everything. We're not doing this, I can't. We're finding out ways we can. We did that survey, and I don't, Amy says it's no good, but it is good. We're the only ones that's done a survey. And we have a huge amount of people who come to our meetings. Dummerston is very much engaged. What I want to say is that you're talking about universal meals. There is another way to do universal meals. We have a statement from the woman who handles them, and she set out the two different ways. And one is the way we're doing now with the, that only Brattleboro can be part of. The other way, all the towns can be part of. I don't happen to have it with me, but we've reached out and we found something that way. As far as sharing foreign language, that's an easy thing to share between districts and costs and not have a full-time foreign language teacher. That's not impossible. We've been doing that. We're doing that now with music. We're doing that now with other teachers. It's not impossible to do that. You forgot to say we have teachers on our Alternative Governance Structure Committee, and they're very excited to be involved in this because teachers have not been involved in this. We've talking with John Castle. He's got 13 school districts under his superintendency. They want to keep it all together. What he and several other communities around here are doing on the SU level, and I have a list of ones that are doing it now and ones that are proposed to do it, are working on what we call an enhanced supervisory union. Because supervisory union is listed in the law as the alternative structure. I personally, and I think most of our committee, we're working with Dummerston, but we're also working on the side, working with the group. we would love to sit down and talk like we are right now and talk about some of these things, do some of the research, find out what we really can or can't do. Because this supervisory union has worked so well together for, I don't know, 50 years, and this has just torn the whole supervisory union apart. We're losing Vernon now. You're threatening that you're gonna kick Dummerston out, basically, and, you know, we're not gonna be working together. And not, yeah, well, you know, you're not gonna be working together. And one of the things also I want to pull out is equity. Equity does not mean the same. Equity does not mean equal, but it means opportunities. We don't all have to have the same programs. We can have different programs. But as long as we're working and as long as the students are working and our students who need extra help are coming up in their tests. We've looked at test scores, particularly for Dummerston and what's happening. We just need to have those conversations. Why are we blowing this whole supervisory union up? It's worked well. We've had our own school boards. We've had, you know, town meetings. It's a democracy. What we're talking now is not a democracy. What we're talking about is this whole consolidation thing where somebody else runs my town's life. I'd really love to talk to you, all of you, and invite you to come and talk with us. Vernon has said they will come and talk with us. You know, I'd really like to do that and be able to keep what we have, work together to make it better, work together to help schools who need help. I don't know, I can't say any more. I guess that's it.
Thank you. Paul?
Hi, Paul Herman, Dummerston. It was more of a question or wondering what's happening, you know, with Vernon. Presumably Vernon's going to vote to withdraw from the high school. Now,
Yeah, go ahead.
has the vote come in?
Yes. 238 to withdraw, 47 opposed to withdrawing, and 1 spoiled vote.
So I think that was a pretty
238 to
foregone
47.
conclusion. Now, they're withdrawing from the high school. They're not withdrawing from the supervisory union. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So they will continue to be part of the supervisory union and until some kind of a vote is taken. If there's a consolidation vote that succeeds, then they have an issue. And then they have to figure out how to get their administrative stuff done. But I'm wondering, you know, if Vernon is still part of the supervisory union, why can't, that means the supervisory union doesn't go away, at least for the time being. So what happens in the future? That's the main question. And how do we I don't know, Vernon needs to do its thing, but it seems like it would make more sense to keep this whole supervisory union intact with the 5 towns. My next question came about, though, is regarding Vernon. Vernon was part of the study committee, was part of the original 5-town study committee. And I keep coming back to the Hotel California analogy that everybody has used periodically. Once you're in, you can't leave. And so what happens to Vernon with respect to the study committee? If they can't withdraw from the study committee, does their town have to go be part of the vote that's coming up? Well, I know you're shaking your head, but it's a question, because if they were originally part of it, maybe that's a question for Chris Leopold.
Well, they just voted today to leave. They're done. They voted out.
Well, no, they can't leave, you said that.
They can't leave the study committee.
Well, they're off the study committee, but they're out of the, they're off of the
They're not.
They're still, they just haven't voted. They're on the study.
Yeah.
they just don't participate, and they just voted to take themselves out of the BUHS.
So they do not need to have a vote regarding these articles of agreement, if that's your
Well, it
question.
seems funny that one town can leave and another town can't.
That's a state issue.
Yeah,
Well, I haven't seen that anywhere. I mean, I'd like to
it's
see.
a law.
It's a law just
State
for
Well, I'd
that.
like to see the law. I mean, if you.
Call Matt Hebert, he helped write the law.
Right, yeah.
No, this is high school now. I'm not talking about high school, I'm talking about study committee. What gives Vernon the right not to be part of the vote? Because they engaged in the study committee. They voluntarily did not participate after they decided. And I'm not trying to pick on Vernon, I'm trying to say, okay, what's the structure?
Well, as we heard from Rebecca Holcomb over a year ago, they could not leave the study committee. We knew that, we all got a letter. However, they're not at the table,
Right.
much as we encourage them to be here, but they are not. And they're not included in the Articles of Agreement, so they will not be voting on, they will not be merging with us.
They're listed on the country page.
Yes, but they are not part of the 4 towns who are merging, would consider.
Or how come they don't have a right to vote on the merger?
They could, they are not here.
Well, no, they're not here.
All right, so,
You see
does
what I'm
any-
getting at? I don't know.
no, not really. I don't think it's a,
You don't see, you don't see.
I don't think it's worthy of discussion right now.
Well,
But you've shared and we've heard it, and people in the
Thank you very
public have
much.
heard it, and we're good. I'm feeling good, yeah? Okay, anything else from you guys? You're good? Did you have a comment?
Just a question.
Yeah.
So when are we discussing if with people or towns are gonna be advisable or advisory or whatever the term is?
We've all, that's in the articles, there 4 towns are,
Oh, I thought that was gonna be a specific discussion.
only if it was raised.
We raised it before, it was gonna be on the agenda.
Yeah, I didn't catch that.
I didn't catch that at all. I thought we said that was part of the agenda for tonight, is to discuss which ones were gonna be advisable and which ones were going to be necessary.
No one raised that issue, and we
Because
voted
raised
the
it last
mergers.
week when we said, or last time we met, and said, what are we gonna go through, and that was part of the question we were gonna go through.
Okay, but we did just vote, so if there wants to be another motion to,
Well, isn't it too late because we already approved it?
Yeah,
indeed.
we already,
Yeah.
I didn't do all that.
Did you understand? Did you understand?
I forgot about that.
Well, I thought it was on the agenda as a specific item, because you asked for what we were gonna talk about, so.
Well,
that was part of
it
what we-
wasn't specifically on the agenda tonight. I mean, you can read your agenda.
Right, but that's what we talked about, what the issues before we voted on, what we were gonna talk about, so.
So as I've said, we haven't talked about it, and we just voted the merger to go to the boards. Certainly, if the boards bring up a concern about Article 1, that can come back to us on August 24th.
And we can modify it then.
Yeah, but every town is represented here, and none of the 4 towns raised that issue, so. they-
So as it stands right now, we all fail if anybody says no. The whole merger fails.
Yes,
And it's to get to the question that Paul asked earlier, that if it fails, then our next plan is discuss at that point and see where we're
no,
going.
our time limit is up, guys.
Yeah.
November is right around the corner,
So
so
that-
our time limit is up. That's why it was a moot point for Paul to raise it, because we've been working for the last 2 years,
Yeah.
because we have thought these articles of agreement were worthy of consideration. 2 years, hundreds and hundreds of
It
hours.
goes to the state.
And our time limit
So it
is
goes to
November.
the state, that what
Yes.
Paul said is right.
Yeah,
It goes to the
but-
state and we let the state decide.
It's not
Unless-
even letting, that's just what
But unless
happens.
individual school districts want
Right,
to have start conversations now,
Right.
which is what you're talking about in Dummerston.
Which is what Dummerston's doing.
If other school districts want to engage in that, that's not this board's responsibility,
Correct.
task force responsibility.
You're true.
That's another
Yeah.
responsibility.
So that's why we talked about earlier, that if other towns were interested, they would be doing that. Right now, the only town that's doing that is Dummerston. And so they would be a little bit ahead, but their time limit is quite quick. I mean, after November, what is it? January or something. So,
It's December.
yeah, so there you go.
January. She said she wasn't gonna.
Okay.
January.
Yeah.
I would imagine that given there was additional legislation, pertinent legislation this year, that was only passed in May, which put so much more potentially on the table, that if we, that our local legislators would help us find a way to get an extension to consider all the new options that are there.
They already did
Part
do
of
that.
the new law.
They
That
already
is
did
part
that.
of the new law.
Well, then maybe since, I mean, obviously, this new legislation only passed in May, so we need more. I mean, it's,
So I think it was July, right? So
Yes.
It
It was
was July.
it was
and now
July
it's-
and then
now
November,
it's
but,
November.
but it's beginning to appear that it's not enough, because the fact of the matter is, the committee, in the meetings I've sat through, has been very conscientiously reluctant to open up new area that again, I mean, you've said several times, we spent 2 years talking about it, we're finished.
No,
And,
can I interrupt?
Yes, feel free,
So-
but we're gonna,
We have spent 2 years looking at many of the different options, revisiting them numerous times. It's not this one option that we settled on and have stuck to.
And
What
researching
we-
equity and.
We have,
programming.
yeah, so I think your perspective, if you go back onto the website and look, there is reams and reams of paper that could be printed out with all the information that we have.
I did print them out, they were at our meeting, the town
So-
meeting, I brought them, remember?
So you're saying that there are no viable alternatives to what we're doing?
No, I think that we have picked out the best alternative under the auspice of Act 46 for our children in terms of the educational opportunities and equity that we can provide them. Is it ideal? You know, I mean, this gets into the Donna Russo Savage where she didn't want to debate the merits of the law. You know, I don't want to debate the merits of the law either, but we have to abide by the law. When she was here the last time, she and Brad James outlined the 4 different options that they saw for our area. And the one that we're proposing is one of them. And that is the one that we, after looking at all the many different scenarios, reds and muds and 2x2s and 3x1s or whatever, you know, all the different options, it's the one that we kept coming back to. So it has, yeah, you can't say that we have only been stuck on this one because we have not.
Well, what is this enhanced, this AGS and this enhanced stuff and all that? I don't understand, I mean, there's been such a
I don't either.
outpouring of information, I'm actually.
I think in a lot of ways, folks, while, you know, we need to look at all the options, you also have to look at the timeline and the requirements of the law and whether or not, and I'm thinking specifically of Dummerston, you know, whether or not we're gonna be able to do that. And then the realities of a decision to not join, you know, say the Dummerston board, and I'm fully expecting them to come back as this is their feedback, is they wanna be listed as advisable, right? That's not necessary. That they wanna be listed as advisable, you know, and I would bring that back to the study committee and then, you know, maybe that would be what we do. But eventually, you know, it's gonna come full circle, like Donna Russo Savage said, you know, there is a statewide plan. If you look at the map that the Vermont School Board Association publishes and the AOE publishes, it's red. You know, the majority of districts throughout our state have merged. You know, and they're responding to the call of the declining enrollment and the increasing educational costs. There are real realities out there for taxpayers that we have to face as part of this. And I honestly don't feel that as a Dummerston resident, that I personally can, if Dummerston were to continue on and even lose the amount of state funding we get back, because we are not in the old Act 60 terms a sending town, we are a receiving town. If we were to be responsible for that additional money, plus the money that we actually put out of our pocket now, I couldn't afford to live in the town. I don't know that anybody could, except for the extremely wealthy.
Thank you, Amy. Oh, guys, it's 8:10, so we're gonna stop. No, you cannot. You cannot, I said no. Is there a motion?
She's not telling the whole truth.
Yeah, I'm asking you to stop. I do want to say that while there have been people in the public who say that we've broken up and that we're all hostile towards each other, I want to say that I'm not feeling that at all. Over the last 2 years, I've been to know you guys quite well, and I do enjoy seeing you, even though I wish it were at a party rather than here. One quick comment, and then we're
But I
gonna.
just would like to extend that if anybody's interested in what Dummerston has done or is interested in starting, I'd be more than happy to give you the benefit of all that we've done. I believe one local principal said, you could sell this for money.
Great.
But I would not charge you anything but your lovely smile.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn? There isn't. Second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
And the state
All right, good
cap
night.
does not say that the majority has voted.